This is episode 35 of the best podcast available. Happy Thursday. I'm Jason Gibbs alongside Andrew Gribble, and the virtual offseason just about coming to a conclusion here in the next 24 hours or so, Gribbs. A lot of sports news going on. And how does it impact the NFL? We're about to find out. Sports are officially back. The NBA set to resume play July 30th, although some players are backing out already. MLB finally got their act together. It looks like they're going to be back on July 24th. The NHL expected to resume play late July, early August. And knock on wood, 26 NFL teams expected to report to training camp on July 28th. A lot to watch, a lot to take in after 3 months of, well, nothing.
Yeah. What's interesting, man, I think the sport that's gotten the most coverage, I think, in what they're doing is the NBA, because I think they're the ones that are going outside the box the most with this. They're trying to do the bubble thing, which is probably it's a big challenge, and everyone's discussed this 115-page document that they came up with in preserving the atmosphere. But even then, there's still going to be flaws in the system. But like you mentioned, there's a couple prominent players that have already announced that they're not going to be a part of this. I think the most recent one being Avery Bradley of the Lakers. I mean, that's a key player on a team a lot of people can believe could win the championship. And I think his reasons are good. And I think there's very little to fault in what in why he's deciding to do this. So it'll be interesting to see what it looks like as these players kind of return to their facilities. And baseball's obviously going through a unique spring training because Florida and Arizona are kind of a mess right now with cases. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I think the NFL will be paying close attention because it's inevitable that some of these guys are going to get tested positive. And then it's about how you react in the moment and preserve the seasons that you're going forward with.
Yeah, there are reports out there that around 10 teams in the NFL have players that have tested positive for COVID-19. So, it's definitely something to monitor. It's definitely something to watch as to how these leagues are going to address things. And you mentioned it. I mean, baseball and basketball are going right into the hotbeds, the hot zones for this. So I'm not sure it makes all the sense in the world. The good news for the Indians is opening day won't be snowed out this year. Yep. It will be quite the opposite. But it looks like all of these sports are going to come together at one time. And then you're going to throw in events like the Masters. And once the NFL season starts and the U.S. Open and tennis is going to come back with the U.S. Open at some point. There's a lot of sports that are going to get thrown down people's throats, and a lot of TV time, and probably not a bad thing because I'm not sure how many TV shows have actually been able to tape. But if you're a network, you are clamoring for some of this sporting activity.
Yeah, the baseball one's going to be interesting to watch because that's the most close resemblance that you're going to get to the travel that the NFL teams are going to have to engage on, and then maybe also the kind of the time in the clubhouse. I think baseball is similar to the NFL in that regard, where you spend a lot of time in the locker room, and I think that's that. But obviously, baseball doesn't have the same contact that football does, so you can essentially play the sport without having to touch anyone or even get that close to someone. So again, a lot to learn, and it's just going to be all about, the key is going to be keeping the guys safe and in a situation where you're not worried about an outbreak within your own building. And then if you want to learn from NASCAR, I believe they just had, 5,000 fans were at Talladega, which I think seats well over 100,000. So I mean, yes. That's a huge complex. I've been there a few times, and so it's small increments here each over the next couple of weeks, and all of this will be important as the NFL continues to work on its policies and getting everything as safe as possible.
And speaking of attendance, from Daniel Kaplan, sports business reporter at The Athletic, with a story out on Tuesday. With the NFL facing significant financial losses from games played without fans, the NFL will not be implemented a game day approach that is identical for all teams when it comes to attendance. Attendance will be a state-by-state, county-by-county thing, an unnamed NFL source told Kaplan. It will not be a one-size-fits-all, which means that in some states, fans will be present for games, in others, not. What do you make of that news coming out on Tuesday from The Athletic and from an unnamed source in the league? So take that for what it's worth. But some stadiums might have fans. Others might be piping in fan noise.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL has to make a lot of tough decisions here. It's one less decision they don't have to make on this thing. And I think as we've seen, as this has unfolded the last few months, I mean, it hits the country in different waves at different times. And I think that you're opening the door to being able to let some fans into an area that really isn't having an issue with the virus at that particular time. And I also do think that, I don't know, I mean, it really is going to make these decisions tough on the governors and the people in these counties, because they know how important, getting people in terms of revenue could be. But it's going to be all about safety. And I think that it's I don't know if I think I kind of agree with it in that I don't think it's going to create some kind of advantage for one team or not for another team. Because I mean, even then it's not like you're going to have one game that with 70,000 people and the next week was 0. I just don't, I can't see that happening. So I think to me, it really shows the flexibility the NFL is willing to show with these decisions and not really locking themselves into one way of thinking when this thing is just changing with each passing week.
Are you concerned at all that with every decision that the NFL has made has been a blanket decision for all 32 teams? We're not going to open a facility until all 32 teams can get into their facilities. This is how we're going to do the draft. And everybody, this is how the draft is going to go. This is how the virtual off season is going to go. There won't be in-person camps. Are you concerned at all that the NFL is branching out too much, and instead of making one rule for everybody, that they're being a little more flexible?
Yeah, I'm not really concerned about that, because the game day experience is different everywhere you go in normal circumstances. You can't force a city to sell out every game. I mean, you just can't you can't force a place to be equally as loud as another stadium. So I think this is where you can use the unique game day atmospheres is still playing into that. So I'm not too concerned about that. And I think based on what we've learned these last few months, I think it's obviously the best decision they made was to wait on letting these people back in facilities. Because I think you really have to get everything in order from a health standpoint to ensure that you're doing things the right way and not really having a college football scenario where one team does one thing, another team does one other thing. Because when you're all doing things the same uniform way, I think that allows you to use the best possible practices, whereas I just don't think it's possible at the college football level to get everyone on the same level, because not everyone has the same amount of money.
So my advice to Browns fans would be wear your mask, maintain your safe distance, wash your hands, don't touch your face in public, and maybe you'll get a chance to watch some Browns football here in 2020 in person.
I said, again, the season still is now 2 full months away?
Yep.
A lot can change. And I think that that's why I'm still optimistic about what the game day experience might be like for this season, what the season could look like. And it's just going to be different. And I think we have to come to grips with that. And I think that I'm not down in the pessimistic hole on any of this I think I'm optimistic about all these sports getting off the ground in some way, shape, or form. And you just have to be flexible, and you just have to understand that, the breaking news, these guys, there's going to be some positive tests. It's just inevitable, but it's how you deal with it and prevent a widespread contamination.
Yep,
I guess.
Exactly. How quickly you can get to the problem, fix the problem, isolate the problem will be the biggest test.
Yeah.
So, all right, time now for our Get to Know You Spotlight. We've been getting to know some of the coaches, some of the front office personnel that are new in Berea or continue to be working from home. And right now, it's a chance to sit down with new Browns defensive line coach Chris Kiffin. Chris, the younger brother of Lane Kiffin and the son of the great Monty Kiffin. So a lot of expertise. The guy has been around. He's seen quite a bit. And you're going to learn something or two in this interview. Have a watch and have a listen. And here on the best podcast available, as we get to know our new coaching staff and a lot of members of our new front office as well. Happy to be joined on this week's edition of the BPA by new defensive line coach Chris Kiffin. Coach, appreciate a few minutes of your time. We were just talking before we went on, and the work from home continues even for you right now. And I think for a lot of the coaches, and you mentioned it, it's just a little bit easier with everything already all set up for you as opposed to trying to navigate the waters in Berea at the facility with everything going on there.
Yeah, I think for me and I think for some of the assistants, it just kind of made sense. We're still doing our Zoom meetings with the players, and to be able to just keep our remote set up the same and not try to go to the office and set up a new one to basically do the same thing we're doing from home. So for us, it made sense, but I understand why the head coach, general manager are in there getting things and getting a feel for how it needs to look come training camp
time. How much improved as a Zoom instructor from the beginning of the virtual offseason until now?
Repeat that one more time. It broke up there.
Oh, sorry about that. I was just asking, how much have you improved as a Zoom virtual instructor from the beginning of this to now?
I think we've all improved some, but I definitely have. I mean, at first I had no idea what it was, and after a week, my wife, her family, all the in-laws thought how cool it was. We could all get in on Zoom, and my kids were in here on it. So I think for everybody, it's kind of been an eye-opener of what you can get done, but the different apps that we can hook up to quiz these guys, to test them. There's a virtual whiteboard I use every day to draw plays and to teach schemes to the guys. So that part's been really smooth. So. But just like anything, a little practice, and practice doesn't make perfect, it makes better. So,
I know when I talked to you a couple months ago, you had not really been able to meet many of the players, but what have you gotten to know about your group, and what do you like about them from just the personality standpoint?
Just like any group, you have a bunch of different guys in there, so it's going to be a mesh of a bunch of different personalities, but. I would say that part is the challenging part. As you guys probably in your background too, with all these Zoom meetings, you have different guys that come in and all the microphones are muted, and then you have one teacher, and so there's not the. I heard about some other NFL teams trying to mimic the locker room of keeping the mics on for the first 5 minutes, things like that. So you got to think outside the box to try to get to know them so they can clown around with each other in this type of environment. So we kind of missed out on that a little bit. But just, obviously I've had time to get to know them individually through phone conversations and whatnot. And I'm just really excited about the group as a whole, the different guys we got, different veterans, the different young guys. Some of the pieces we added this offseason have come in and been, just the ultimate pros in the way they've come in and meshed. So very excited about it.
Chris Kiffin is our guest, our new defensive line coach here on the best podcast available. Coach, you mentioned, and I've read it a couple times through various things, media publications and whatnot, the importance of teaching and the importance of getting everybody on the same page, and for people to have success. Even last year when you were with the 49ers, a case of instructing and teaching and making sure that the message is getting through and guys understand what they're doing when they hit the field. How important has it taken on an added importance of teaching during this time when you can't do mini camps and voluntary workouts and things along those lines?
Absolutely. There's there's a lot of elements that go to that. So it's been challenging this offseason because we're missing the on the field element. And, we had them send videos of themselves working out and doing drills, but it's still so hard when you're not out there with them, hands on, getting to know each other, because every guy learns different, and everybody's technique is different, and you're trying to mold everybody's style of play to fit into a scheme you're trying to implement, and it's tough, especially with the situation that we had. So that's just something I've totally believed in from a young age. My father taught me that as a coach, how important teaching is, and how everybody learns at different levels, and at the end of the day, it's our job to get them prepared mentally Sunday so they can perform and do what they do on Sundays.
You mentioned your dad. I was wondering, could you imagine him operating under these circumstances and using the technology to his advantage?
He's like the typical grandpa whose just face is way too heavy on the camera the entire time. But we have had him on a couple times, and he's actually still helping my brother at Ole Miss. So they've sent some screenshots of him on the Zoom meetings, and a lot of time he's even not on the picture or he's way too in the picture. But it's pretty funny.
And have you talked? I mean, you mentioned your brother, and he's obviously at Ole Miss right now. Are you guys able to share like what works, maybe what doesn't in these kind of circumstances, and how does that play out?
Yeah, I think it's so different, the landscape, everything, because they're trying to bring people back on campus right now. You see that in college football, what's going on, how challenging that is, especially college kids, and what they're doing outside of the building and whatnot. So. But yeah, they've shared in the same issues, just like LSU and these other programs you're seeing popping up. So, I mean, I think everybody's learning daily from everybody else's experiences, but I think the NFL has a good grasp on what we're trying to do. We've covered that in our staff meetings, what it's going to look like when we come back for training camp. And, we're going to embrace the suck, and we're going to be ready to dive in when they let us come back.
What made this position and this job appealing to you? I mean, you're coming off a year with the 49ers and a trip to the Super Bowl under Kyle Shanahan. A lot of success at the college level as well. Definitely had options. What made this job most appealing to you? Me personally, I go back to watching. I watched a lot of the NFL Network films on people, and I remember watching Belichick with his time in Cleveland and Saban and those guys in the room, and how getting it turned around, things like that. And so that always that sparked my interest about Cleveland. And then when it all went down, just hearing all the good things people had to say about Coach Stefanski. We had some people in the building that had worked with him before, and then obviously Joe Woods being right down the hall from me all year, being able to work with him daily, because obviously he's a coverage guy and me being a front guy, and how we were able to work together last season. So it just kind of all fit like a glove. And then my wife and I are kind of Midwest people, and on a map we're like, okay, well, that's kind of Northeast, but I've heard people say it feels like Midwest, and we got here and it absolutely does. So right now we're on cloud nine. We love it.
And how have you liked how this defensive staff has kind of come together, and what do you like about the group you're working with?
Oh, we got a good group, really good group. Knowing a couple of the guys, Tarver and Ben Bloom, and then obviously the other guys we added, Jeff, and I didn't know them ahead of time, and then we were able to interview Brand. But it's a really solid group, like we talked about before, being able to teach. But we got to spend a couple weeks together before the offices were closed, and that's always a interesting time when you bring a bunch of new guys in from all different schemes and whatnot. And Joe did a great job of, hey, we're going to do this like the Niners, we're going to do this like the Vikings, we're going to do this like we did at Denver, and it's going to mesh and it's going to be great. And we all have a voice in there, we all have a say, but at the same time, I don't see a lot of egos in that room. I see a lot of guys that just want to mesh well together and pull in the same direction.
Now, your assistant defensive line coach, you go back a long ways with Jeremy and his past. Did you think he was going to be a coach back when you first met him? And what was it like getting him his first NFL opportunity at this level?
It was so interesting that, how it came down, because I was a graduate assistant at Ole Miss. He was still playing, and to see him and they had some really good players on that D-line, Greg Hardy and Parade Jerry, and some guys that played in the NFL for a while. And Jeremy was, he wasn't an NFL guy, but he was the hard worker, overachiever, did everything right, knew the scheme. He was the glue that kept that crazy group together. And then to see him, we tried to get him down at Ole Miss a number of times because he was right up the street in Nashville, but his wife had a good job. He had a good job at a high school there. And then he made his jump to Vanderbilt, last season. And then, when this came open, we were looking for the guy. It was a perfect fit. Exactly what we were looking for. Somebody who's hungry, wanted to get in, and somebody that I already knew has the right character, has the right work ethic. So it was a perfect fit for us.
Coach, in 2013, the National Recruiter of the Year, Scout.com, what do you look for in players, whether it was at the college level or at the pro level? What do you look for in a football player when you're talking to them about free agency, whether you're going through the draft process? What are you looking for in guys, especially on the defensive line?
I know it's the simple answer, but the number one thing I always say to people that ask that is good football players. Like, and I'm not stepping on scouts' toes because I do believe in size-speed ratio and speed and height and length and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you can chase that in, forever and not get what you want if they're not a good football player. Guys that can just get it done. And going back to my dad and Pete Carroll and guys that they played with in the Super Bowl, nose tackles that were 6 feet tall that nobody would even sign off the street, and they get them in there and they're starting in the NFL. Like, just guys that can play the game, tough, gritty, passionate, effort, right attitude. And then obviously guys that have intangibles and length and speed. At this level, you have to have most of those things, but at the end of the day, just somebody you can rely on that's a damn good player.
Now, looking at your group now, what have you gotten to know about Myles Garrett now after seeing him from afar, and now you get to coach him? What have you learned about him?
Well, he's humble. He's eager to learn. He's motivated. He's got big goals for this next season. I'm going to keep those between me and him, but he's just a guy that I'm really excited to coach. But the main thing for me walking in was how humble he was. From afar, you never really know until you get to know somebody. But he's a humble guy that just wants to work. And obviously one of the most talented players in the league, one of the freakiest athletes we've seen at that position. And, he can still get better. And that's the crazy thing. So excited to get our hands on him and actually get on that field and work with him and see how high we can help him go.
And then another guy in your group that kind of has a unique experience, and that's Adrian Claiborne added to the team. I mean, what can a veteran like that do to help a guy like Myles and really help your group overall?
On my exit meeting yesterday with him, I told him, we're so excited about a bunch of things, but your versatility, number one, like to be able to go inside on third down and be a great rusher, to be able to go inside when we're in a pinch and want to play fair defense, to back up at left end, at right end, and to get in the mix, and just, how much experience he has. And then when I was using the example before about the guys coming in and meshing right away, I'm talking about him like he's the ultimate pro. He just comes in, he works, he's consistent. Not the most vocal guy in the room, but that's okay because the younger guys see what he's doing every day, how consistent he is, and that speaks volumes. So super excited about him. He will have a big time role with us, and we'll see.
Yeah, I would say too, the inside guys, we go out and we get Billings in the offseason, and then you've got a guy like Ogunjobi who quietly goes about his business and does his thing, and Sheldon Richardson, who's seen a lot of success, done it all. Your thoughts on the inside and the interior of that defensive line?
Yeah, I think we got a great rotation set up. In this day and age, you got to be able to rotate guys through games, especially when offenses want to go tempo. And but even when they're not going tempo, to beat in the trenches for 60, 70 snaps a game is too much. So you got to have two deep at both inside positions. And like you said, we use a third-round pick on one, Jordan, that we're super excited about. Very good athlete with all the intangibles we talked about: size, speed, length. And then Larry's so hungry. I mean, he just works and works and works and works. And and then those other guys, obviously Sheldon has so much experience, very good player. That I'm looking to try to help him be even better. And then you add Andrew as the fourth guy right now, or as a backup, but a guy who can press these starters. They can come in and compete. He will be a dominant run defender, but I'm going to challenge him to be able to get to the quarterback as well. So, and then we got some guys down the line inside too that can make some noise. So I'm super excited about it. Competition is going to make all of them better. I just can't wait to get to work with them.
What's the biggest challenge a guy like Jordan faces because of these circumstances?
Yeah, I don't know if it's just learning the playbook. Everybody says learn the playbook because you miss the walkthrough elements of it and all that. But really the style of play, I think we're going to change his stance a little bit. We're going to change his techniques, his eyes, his hands. So there's just slight things that when you don't get to work in the off season together, which we always do in OTAs and whatnot, that hurts a little bit. But, that's just going to be for him and I to spend extra time together when we do get together, and to make sure all those things get done. But he's super sharp. You know, he aced his final exam, so to call it, the other day. For a rookie, like he's really sharp and he's picking it up fast. So that part won't be a problem for him.
And then with all your guys, what about what Joe wants to run on defense? What do you like about that when it pertains to the defensive line?
Yeah, we're going to cut them loose. We're going to attack, and we're going to play fast, and we're going to try to play in the opponent's backfield. And the old saying is tackle the running back on the way to the quarterback. You know, I 90% believe that, because we do have to stop the run with great technique and whatnot, especially in this conference. You don't stop the run, it'd be a long day. But we got to affect the quarterback this day and age. If you're not affecting the quarterback and his completion percentage is high and he's feeling comfortable all day, it's going to make for a long day for your defense. So we're going to let them play free. Obviously, we're going to be disciplined. We're going to coach those things, but we're going to let these guys play to their talents, and we're going to attack like crazy and then mix it up some on third down and have some good schemes to go with it. And then what we have to do, it's our job as coaches to put our best guys in best position to win. So we got to find mismatches across the board up front, and we got to pick on their weak links every Sunday and things like that. But we're going to let them play.
One final one, Coach, and we'll let you go. We appreciate the time today. New defensive line coach Chris Kiffin, our guest. Coach, have you told Myles he needs to stop dunking over people and providing is there such a thing as lifting too much weight with Myles Garrett?
You know, I think that's just a hair above my pay grade. We got some great strength coaches that talk to him about all that stuff. But as soon as I seen Lamar Jackson running and jumping over a jet ski, I don't think anything can top that. There's a lot of people holding their breath on that video. So we're going to let Myles be Myles. And I know he's had a tremendous offseason in the weight room and doing his stuff. So looking forward to all these guys getting back.
Coach, we appreciate the time. Welcome to Cleveland, and look forward to getting you in the building, and looking forward to eventually all of us being in the building and getting training camp going a little over a month from now. Thanks for the time. Enjoy these next few weeks here, and we'll see you soon, and best wishes here in 2020.
Thank you very much, guys. You guys have a great day. Go Brown.
Want to thank Chris Kiffin for his time, and again, Gribbs, just like most of the coaching staff, continues to work from home, but as he said, it's easier than trying to come into the office and work around some of the logistics and some of what's happening, because he's got everything already set up and everything's working fine from a teaching standpoint at his home.
Yeah, Gibbs, I've been working just on my laptop since we've been here, but when I go to the office, I have 2 monitors. And when I came home, I had these grand ambitions of setting up my 2 monitor setup like I have the office. It's still sitting on the floor in our 3rd floor. So I am dreading that part of going back in the office and having to set up my station again. I'm hoping I can get some help from our IT staff when we get back there, because I'm not good at that stuff. So I can understand why once you get something going at home and you figured out your circumstances, I don't blame them for not going in and trying to mess with what's been working, especially once you figure it out. So that's good to hear, and I think that it'll just be interesting once all these guys do get back, how they adapt, and because I still think your normal way of meeting with the players is going to be different this year. I think you'll probably have to be as virtual as possible to just kind of avoid these situations where you're all crammed in a room together.
Yeah, it's going to look very different from everything that we've been told, and Gribble and I haven't been back. I think it's 15 weeks now. We're on the verge of playing a whole season here from home. So it's going to be interesting to see other big takeaways from Chris Kiffin, who I thought was really good. And here's a guy with a lot of experience from the college level, but also has done it at the highest level in the National Football League, you know, taking control of that 49ers defensive line last year on their Super Bowl run.
Yeah, you know, I like what he had to say about Adrian Claiborne. I thought that was an interesting thing. Not the biggest name signing the Browns made this offseason, but I think it's a valuable addition to the group, because the defensive line is like suddenly one of the more veteran groups on the entire team. And I think having someone with his level of experience can really help and really fills the void you had from last year when you really didn't have a reliable 3rd down pass rusher on the team. So I think Claiborne's presence could be huge if he can continue to do what he's done these last few years in that role, which I think is best suited for him. That can make this defensive line very good, and like he said, very versatile. That he can play on the inside too, and open things up for Myles and Olivier and Sheldon and Larry out there. I mean, I think that can help make that group as good as people think it can be.
I also, the big takeaway I had, I think he's pretty high on the rookies in that defensive line room, both the undrafted and the drafted. And I think you asked him a great question about, the struggles of learning things, and all indications are that the rookies have been on top of things. And yeah, they're going to need a little extra time, and they're going to need a little more hands-on work once they get to the building and once we get to training camp. But there's some guys that can make an impact in that defensive line room here in 2020.
Yeah, and it goes along with, I think, what Chad O'Shea said last week with they're going to have a window to impress. And if you don't impress during that window, they're probably going to have to not move on, but focus on the guys that are going to be able to help this year. You're not going to have the same lead up time or same ability to work through the mistakes that you did, because you've got to maximize every bit of time you get with these guys on the field. And I think from a defensive line perspective, I mean, those guys get work during training camp. I mean, on fundamentals, technique. I mean, these guys are on the sled as much as anyone, and that's something you simply can't do during this period. So I think for the defensive line especially, they need to get on the field and make the most of that time whenever they can.
Yeah, nope, I would agree with that. I think it's also good that he has that relationship with Joe Woods. And we've talked about on the offensive side, the guys that have a relationship with Kevin Stefanski and some of the veteran coaches he's brought in. Chris Kiffin is a guy that knows quite a bit about this. And, I found it interesting yesterday or the other day when we recorded with him, and he said, the 49er defensive line was really good, but it's all about the teaching part. And once they figured out what we were trying to teach them and what we wanted them to do, the sky was the limit. He said the talent's there. And it's the same thing with our room, with Myles and Olivier and Sheldon and Ogunjobi and Claiborne and company. If they understood the virtual off-season program and the teachings, and they've got that down, then we're really going to see these guys take the next step, especially Myles Garrett, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't tell us the goals that he has for Myles this year, but I'm curious, because I think that Myles is as motivated as ever. I mean, he should be coming into the prime of his NFL career right now. I mean, this could be a really interesting year, a big year for Myles, and I think that it's pretty understood that now is the time to really start wrecking some games from that position.
Yeah, no question. And again, the defensive line has gone from, what we thought a year ago was a deep room to an even deeper room, and a room that, you can't afford to lose a guy like Myles, and you really don't. I mean, you don't want injuries, but if there is an injury, and in training camp, guys get injured, you do have some guys now behind them, behind those starters and those frontline guys that you have quite a bit of confidence in that can get the job done.
Yeah, I think we saw a lot from Chad Thomas last year. I think he's poised to really help out as well. We don't talk a lot about him, but I mean, you just need to be able to survive those things. And I think that the line as constructed last year, it wasn't able to do it. And I think that most defensive lines would not have been able to survive what happened to that group last year. But the defense just was a mess at the end of last year. They couldn't stop anyone. The Cardinals game was just the one that was especially tough to watch. So you've just got to be able to survive. No one can usually survive 3 injuries. You should be able to survive a couple, though. Even if it is your best player, you got to be able to work around that and be able to keep your defense at least stabilized from that point.
Yeah, no question. And Kiffin was, we're going to get after the quarterback. We're going to rush. We're going to put pressure up the middle and around the ends. But he also made it clear you got to stop the run. And you got to stop the run in this division if you want to win football games and you want to go to the playoffs. So that will be something to watch as well. This run defense struggled definitely down the stretch, and injuries and absences were a big part of that. Final thoughts here. Dak Prescott signs his $31.4 million franchise tender. The two sides have until July 15th to work out a long-term deal. Otherwise, they must wait until the end of the season. Gribs, the clock is ticking. What are the odds? What percentage would you put Dak Prescott signs a long-term deal before July 15th?
You know, maybe I'm at 50-50. Because there's an argument where he should not worry about it, play the season, and he could really cash in when he has them in a situation where they have no choice but to bring him back. But at the same time, you don't want to regress and then not be worth as much. But at the same time, as long as he doesn't get hurt, I imagine his value is going to remain the same. I mean, he's a really good quarterback in a league that has about 20 of them. And there's always, demand for a player of his caliber. So I don't know what I would think Dallas is maybe more incentivized to lock him up at this point, but it's a tricky one. That franchise tag's a big one. It's huge. I mean, it's a huge amount of money for Dak because Dak hasn't made a ton of money to this point. I mean, he was a fifth round pick. I mean, that's huge money for Dak compared to what he's made so far. And that Cowboys offense, we all think it's going to be really good this year. I mean, he's poised to have a huge year. So if he wants to bet on himself, that would be interesting. And also be interesting if he wants to pursue with the Cowboys a Kirk Cousins type deal where it's like 3 years, all guaranteed, and then you get back in the market again. It's just, I think it's all about the confidence in yourself, and also something he has to take into account. What's the salary cap going to look like beyond this year? That could be the incentive for Dak to lock this up now. Would, if you're playing that card, you want to lock it up now. So really, this one's as up in the air as possible, but at least they know they've got him for this year and know what to worry about this year.
Yeah, that's is he the top 10 quarterback in the National Football League?
I think he's borderline, but if you are that means you are invaluable to your team. If you are a top 10 quarterback in the league, that means your team has to have you. I mean, so that's where he is so valuable and will, when you're in that top 10 range and you're up for a contract, odds are you're probably signing the biggest deal in NFL history because that's just what works. That's just what happens at the quarterback position. You just take turns with everyone signing these big deals. So I think he's in that range where he is so vitally important to the Cowboys, where if you take him away from the Cowboys this year, you don't think they're a playoff team, and you put him on the team, they're suddenly a Super Bowl contenders. That's how important he is, and that's how I kind of qualify the quarterback rankings.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of him. I mean, he put up some great numbers last year, and I know that there's a lot of drama around that football team and a lot of things that he's got to put up with. And I just found it interesting. The Cowboys extended all these players, but yet didn't lock up the franchise guy, the one guy that you have to lock up.
Yeah.
You didn't have to give Zeke the big deal, but you did. Cooper got a big deal. Didn't need to, but you did, especially since you drafted CeeDee Lamb. I take a look at all of that with the Cowboys, and I'm like, what is the holdup here? Dak just wanting to be the highest paid quarterback, which he shouldn't be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, but I don't know. It's a weird situation there.
Yeah, when you lock up those other offensive guys, I mean, what are you doing if you're not going to get the quarterback? I mean, that's why they have to have him. I mean, I don't. It's not about fairness on what you should pay him. You got to pay him what the market demands, and your decision is to have him or to not have him. It's not like you can let him go and then go get a better quarterback. You're not. That's not going to happen. So that's the situation you're in. I mean, so that's why they've got no choice. It's just, I think, up to Dak to find a time where they can agree on it and what's most beneficial for him long term. I think that's the decision that has to be made on his end. But he knows this year he's making a ton of money.
Yeah, no question about it. It'll be something to watch here over the next couple of weeks because we're not sure exactly how much there is going to be to watch. I think teams are going to scatter here for a few weeks and get some final days in before things really start to heat up. And it's going to come, and it's going to come very quickly once we get some direction from the National Football League. Want to thank Chris Kiffin for his time. Want to thank Jeff McDaniel for all of his hard work week in and week out. Thanks to Andrew Gribble. You can log on to clevelandbrowns.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Like and subscribe today to the best podcast available. You can also check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Browns. For Andrew Gribble, I'm Jason Gibbs. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to the best podcast available.